Yo guys, Ponchy here, and today we're going to go over how to slice on your Octatrack MK2, and we're going to go over some application of slicing too. Let's go. All right, so I have a couple different samples here. The first one, well, we'll get to that in a sec, but so I have a sample loaded onto track 1 on a flex machine, and I have a sample loaded onto track 5, which is also a flex machine. I'm just going to remove these trigs here for now. So the slicing, the place where you slice takes place in the audio editor. So that would be AED over here. So go ahead and hit AED. So right now, again, that's the whole sample we have here. If you want to zoom in, go to the D encoder and zoom it in a little bit. So you can see the whole sample there. Now, if you're not sure, if you want to record something yourself, sample something yourself, be sure to check out my video on Octatrack sampling. So if you want to sample, to me the easiest way to sample here is to go to the amp section. Well, first things first, you want to make sure your start and end points are correct. Now, I know my start and end points are correct because the way I sampled it exactly within 16 steps. So that makes things easier. It also makes it easier to sample on the fly, which is actually what I did. I sampled a beat coming from my analog rhythm, and if you set up your Octatrack correctly, it'll sample perfectly on time, which is really handy for sampling, again, live or on the fly. So there's my whole sample. Let's go to amp. To me, this is the easiest way to sample. So go to amp, hit yes, and then scroll up or down. You have create slice grid. Now what that's going to do is create, of course, a slice grid, but you can specify how many slices you want it to be in. Now, since like I mentioned, I sampled perfectly within 16 steps, I'm just going to go ahead and do 16 slices. So that means that I can basically assign a slice per trig. So go ahead and hit yes. Align markers to 0 crosses, hit yes. Bam, you're done, you're sliced. So what you can do from here is the interesting part for sure. So if you hit function and yes, you can preview each sample or each slice. And then if you press left or right, you can cycle through each slice. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead, like I mentioned, I have a sample on track 5 as well, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for track 5. So go ahead and hit track 5, go to the audio editor, go to amp, hit yes, create slice grid. And again, I'm going to do it into 16 slices. Yes. Yes, yes. So much yes. Okay. So now I have the sample in track 1 sliced up and the sample in track 5 sliced up. So first, so the way I have it organized, track 1 is my beat, and track 5 is a sample of my Moog Mother 32. So let's mess with the beat first. So you're going to want to check a couple things, because it might not work right off the bat. So go ahead and hit source here, double tap source, and you'll see that you have a slice section here. You're going to want that to be on. So when you change it to on, it also changes the length to slice. You're going to want to keep the length on slice. You can switch it to time, but we won't be going over that in this video. So go ahead and switch slice to on. So then what that does you can hear the different slices if you go to slice mode. But now you might be asking yourself, why are the slices playing longer than the actual slice itself? Now that is controlled by the length parameter over here. So you can see I have my length set to 8, so that essentially means steps. It means 8 steps. So anytime I trigger a slice, it's basically going to play the whole sample up to 8 steps. So I set that personally because I like that better. By default, yours is probably set to 1. So let's try that out. So that'd be good for some purposes. You know, like right here, the third slice here is my bass drum, and the fourth slice here is my snare drum. So if you wanted, you could make a whole beat out of just that. Let's try that. Let's go ahead and try that. So, well, we have to go over one more thing first. So length controls how long the slice is going to play for, or I should say the sample. And then start, you'll see it says SL1. That refers to each slice. So if you want to change, so what happens if you just lay some trigs out here? Let's press play. So right now you have slice 1 triggering 4 times, triggering with the beat here. And I mean, that's it. You know, the length is 1, so each slice is just playing its respective slice. Now keep in mind, length is relative. You know, it's relative to how many slices you created when you created your slice grid. If say you only did 8 slices. Now again, keep in mind my sample was exactly 16 steps long. So if you sliced it into 8 different slices, then that means that each slice would be about 2 steps. 2 steps long, rather than just 1 step if you created a 16 slice grid. So keep in mind it's all relative with each other. Length is relative to how long or how big your slices are. So keep that in mind. So in this case, like we said, we wanted to make a beat using slices 3 and 4. So if you want to change each one of these trigs, right now by default they're all set to slice 1. If you wanted to change each one of these trigs, you have to lock them, hold them down, go over here to slice. Let's change this one to 3. Okay, there we go. We have a bass drum on the first step. Now, of course, you probably want your step 5 here to be the snare drum. So that was, whoops. So that was slice 4. Now let's move this trig over here to 10. We want this to be the bass drum. So that's again slice 3. Let's do it on 11. Slice 3. Okay. Now step 13, we want that to be the snare. All right. So there we go. Now we have a simple beat. Now keep in mind this is the way to do it if you keep your length at 1. But I like to do it in a more arguably a more interesting way. So what I like to do, I like to set my length to 8. So what that means, let's get rid of these trigs here. So we have a trig on 1 set to slice. Oh no, that's set to slice 3. Let's change it back to slice 1. Or let's just get rid of that in general and set it back to default. So this is set to slice 1. The length is 8 steps. So if we play it, this slice is going to play for 8 steps. So, you know, essentially it almost becomes not a slice anymore. It'll essentially play 8 steps worth of the sample, which in this case is half the sample. But interestingly, you know, the slices basically determine where the sample starts. That's one way to look at it. So what happens when we press play? So what we have here is slice 1 playing for 8 steps. So by the time it hits 9, the sample has stopped. So what I like to do, put 2 trigs with sample length 8, and then essentially you have a whole beat there. Keep in mind it's more, I guess you could say this is a less destructive way of chopping up your sample, because I say it's less destructive because in reality you're basically utilizing the sample as it was. You're not really changing it up. You're not really slicing it up into a different order or whatever. We can do that, however. So say, you know, we have slice 1 here on step 1. If we go to step 9, let's change it to a different slice. Let's see what happens. See, now in this case you got to be careful because you might make it sound a little weirder than it's supposed to be. So in this case I just want to keep changing the slice, which is another way of saying change the start point, until I can find something that actually works. Okay, that one's still a little weird. Let's do So in this case, they might not be sliced exactly how you want it, but you know it's kind of just a trial and error thing to see like where you want it to go. Now keep in mind this is a method you can use live, but if you're going to do this live, of course you want to be a little more aware of your slices and where you could potentially go with them. But you know, here's another interesting method. Each slice is set to length 8, but if we add trigs, if we trig more than 8 steps, it basically starts it over each time there's a new trig. So let's set this one. Okay, yeah, they're all set to slice 1 right now. So let's see what that sounds like. Basically, what we got here kind of gave us like a double time feel rather than just this. And then you could even throw more trigs in there if you want. So you're gonna have to experiment with this to kind of find a good method of doing it. If you want to do it live, you know, just messing around, you know, writing a song or something, you know, that's a different story. You have all the time in the world. But if you're doing it live, of course, you want a different result, a more streamlined result, I suppose. So feel free to experiment with that. I'll show you guys a couple more things. So right now we have all these trigs set. Each one is set to slice 1. So an interesting thing we can do is go to the audio editor, go back to amp, hit yes once again. Now instead of creating a slice grid, because we already have one of those, we can go to create random locks. So what this is going to do is take all the trigs that we have laid already, and it's going to turn each one into a random lock, which is another way of saying it's going to choose certain slices for us. So let's try that. So hit yes. Alter trigs, yes. So see, now they're all flashing. They're all parameter locked. So rather than us having to choose the slices, it went ahead and chose them for us. So keep in mind we're still subject to the length parameter, but being as we're triggering sooner than 8 steps, the length doesn't matter as much in this point, or at this point. So let's go ahead and listen to what that sounds like. Now, keep in mind, you know, for live remixing, live slicing, this might not be the most desirable effect, but it certainly is interesting. So. Okay, it's still a little weird, you know, but not too bad. So let's go ahead and create random locks once again. Alter trigs, yes. See, keep in mind, again, this is something you can do live, which is really cool in my opinion. One of the strengths of the Octatrack. Let's do it again, random locks. That one's a little less weird, you know. Again, if you're really aware, if you're really keeping track of your slices, you could come in and fix any one of these, you know, really easily. So see, that one is randomly set to slice 7. Remember, our snare drum was on slice 4, so let's try that. Bam. See, so just by fixing one of the slices, you could easily turn the random locks into a very usable beat. You know, that one's great. You know, that one, you know, it's very similar to the original sample that I created from my analog rhythm, but you know, it's a little different, which is really cool. Okay, now let's try one more thing. So I'm going to go ahead and place some random, let's just try that again. So now keep in mind, using scenes, you can use the fader to select the samples for you. So if we go over here to B, scene B, I already have a couple scenes set here. I'm just going to use scene 16 for this one. So if you go here, scene 16, you want to change the starting slice to slice 16. Whoops. There we go. Slice 16. So what that's going to do is effectively change these slices as you move the fader. So let's try it. So there you guys have it. There's some interesting ways to use slices. Slicing is by far one of the most powerful things about the Octatrack. The fact that you can do this stuff on the fly without having to wait for like loading time or anything like that definitely makes the Octatrack one of the most powerful samplers. It's not even fair to call it just a sampler, am I right? Like, the Octatrack is just one of the most amazing musical boxes ever created. Shout out to Elektron. Keep in mind, I'm not sponsored. I just love the Octatrack. So anyway, hope that helped you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. If you have any further comments about slicing, any extra recommendations, and feel free to leave those below. Hit like if this video helped you out, and please subscribe for more of these videos. I will be releasing more Octatrack stuff, and I release videos every week. So I'll see you guys next time.